Hello to all. Olá, pessoal. Nós estamos começando mais um Wikidata Lab. Eu vou apresentar a minha tela. Apresentar. Vocês veem a minha tela? Sim. Ok. Bem-vindos ao Wikidata Lab número 29, e eu vou começar a falar em inglês. Esse Wikidata Lab é em inglês. Hello to all. Welcome to the Wikidata Lab 29 about round-tripping process. We will be presenting to you this Wikidata Lab today, and we'll have a session, a series of sessions of presenting. Then we will have a discussion session later. By we, I mean me, Éder, Andrew Lih, Richard, and Susanna. These are the usernames on Wiki, their usernames on Wiki. So this Wikidata Lab is an event organized by the Movimento Brasil, the Museu do Ipiranga, with partnership with Banco do Brasil Foundation, with support of Universidade de São Paulo and the Foundation of support of the University of São Paulo. We will be talking about a round-tripping process, and this involves, in our context, the Wikimedia projects, mainly the Wikipedia, the Wikimedia Commons, the Wikidata, but also the other Wikimedia projects. To give a little context, last Wikidata Lab, we talked about metadata applications, tools that are meant to engage people willing to enhance an institution's content, a museum, a gallery, a GLAM institution's content. These people are art lovers, topic experts, users, editors of wiki projects. And the contributions of these individuals in the crowdsourcing activities, that are the metadata applications that we presented, can be used by the institutions. And this process is called data round-tripping, when the institution provides the data and metadata to the Wikimedia projects, is the green arrow, and this content is enriched by individuals in the Wikimedia projects, or by metadata applications and other kinds of activities. And this content in the purple arrow can be used by the institution. When we have this round-tripping, is what we call data round-tripping. In this Wikidata Lab, we will dive into some case studies and try to answer questions and talk about the challenges in the data round-tripping process. This is a part of a graph that we will see later about the wiki, from the wiki to the institution. So how do we export the data that are in the wiki projects to the institution? So now I think I will stop my screen and present to you Susanna. So let me add her. Yes. Thank you, Susanna.
Yes. Hello. I'm here to talk about the research that the Riksantikvarieämbetet, the Swedish National Heritage Board, did on data round-tripping with Albin Larsson as the lead of the project. And I was part of that project, and I will run you through that the contents of that. I will go to the presentation. So just to let you know that I'm not seeing you while I'm presenting, so I hope that Éder, you can make note if there's need to stop or something. Yes. Right. You will find this research in Meta. It was done by Albin and me and Maarten Zijnstra from the Netherlands, and Pavel Marinovsky, well known also as Jaar, the creator of Patipan and other tools. And it started with a research conducted by Maarten, and which was concluded in this research report as a starting point for the project. And in the middle of the project, we produced a midterm report and in the end, the final report. And I will go into the findings of those research. Anyway, this is the graph that you saw already, and this is familiar for you from the blog post that I maybe should find. It is, well, I don't think I have it open in my tabs, but we will post it in the chat if that's possible. I don't know. Anyway, as you can see, this data round-tripping concept is about the exchange of information between GLAM institution and archive museum generally, and the Wikimedia projects. And the institution can provide data and material to the Wikimedia projects, and Wikimedia projects ideally can provide back some other kind of some enriched data. And this cycle has been named the process of data round-tripping. And here we see that the GLAMs, they are willing to generally upload new and richer data and media from the institution. That usually means images, public domain images, data of works and artists, of other collection items. And they are willing also to update existing data, provided, of course, that there are tools that they manage to use. And the authority IDs might be from their own systems and ontologies and their vocabularies, which they can enrich the Wikimedia projects, specifically Wikidata, with. And in general, the GLAMs are interested in projects and projects that enhance the work that they already do, and therefore are interested in ways in which the open-ended work in Wikimedia projects could be made to serve the exhibitions, etc., that they run in the institutions that create, for example, campaigns that align with their activities. And what is it that what kind of contributions do the institutions then value out of those that happen on Wikimedia projects? Very often, for example, was mentioned in this project that names and aliases that users add or other institutions add are of value, and they are willing to use Wikidata concepts for tagging their own collections, and they specifically value using institutional content channeled through Wikimedia projects, such as authority IDs of different institutions, and therefore using those to import linked into institutional content that can be found in other institutions, for example, including translations and source statements. But there are many obstacles, and this is already from the first research that we find. The project started with this background research to several GLAM institutions. Mainly, it had a strong focus on Europe, where many of the project partners were from. And we found out early on some issues, and then these findings were complemented with interviews with these institutional partners, where we found out other preferences that they had. So some issues that they had are here mentioned here. First of all, the lack of provenance. The institution wouldn't necessarily trust the contributions made by anonymous contributors. They would rather listen to what their fellow institutions would be saying, and having less proof for the sources of those, if it was institutional, if the additions were institutional. And therefore also the second point says the same in a way. And another finding was that while creating one prototype, there was a translation prototype. Often the contributors would rely too much on the translation created by automatic translation and not check it. And actually, this is also something broader that we see in the Wikimedia projects, that machine translation is often maybe not cleaned up as much as we would like to, in order to keep the quality in the projects high enough. And then these are the early findings of the survey in the beginning of the project, that very few organizations are capable of ingesting these enriched data back into their systems. There are many different reasons that prevent that. Technical constraints can be, for example, that the collections management systems don't import data at all, or the collections management system is not in the hands of the institution, or that there is no technical personnel at all at the institution, for example. So those institutions who are technically skilled are perhaps able to take advantage of these processes, and they are few. And so when we are thinking about the global landscape of GLAMs and volunteers and knowledge that the communities might have and would be able to add to the knowledge provided by the GLAM institutions, I think we will really have to find out ways technically how to reach back to the institutions. So there are some ideas that I'm just proposing, that what if we could do metadata brewing. I like this. These are like fancy combinations of metadata brewing. So what if it was possible to consolidate, validate, and enhance metadata from different sources across the internet, like descriptions, tags, and other statements? This is actually the high end. This is the very technological, and that doesn't really touch an individual museum. We're perhaps talking about exchange between aggregators and big platforms. And I think this is something that we could keep in the back of our minds, that that what if there was maybe a middle layer that would be able to talk to the, or like a technical middle layer, that it could be able to exchange information with the collections and then brew that data into Wikimedia projects. And then another what if would be, what if we could do provenance forensics? The provenance is a word that not everybody necessarily knows. You should look it up in Wikipedia. I don't think I have it here, but in the page that we have for here for this project, I have, I think, copied it from English Wikipedia. Provenance, and with a link, so you can go there. Provenance is a word traditionally used to state the chronology of the ownership, custody, or location of a historical object. The concept data provenance can also be used in the meaning of recording the origins of any piece of information and its previous states. So I think Wikimedia projects have this capability to record statements originating from a number of sources and allow a platform for evaluating their validity and with the help of source statements. So what we are actually missing here are the source statements in Wikimedia Commons, which has now been a discussion around Commons. So what it could be usable for are, for example, and not limited to, decolonizing collections data from depictions that do not serve the depicted well, and there are other types of cases where this would be important as well. But this is again another idea to keep in the back of your minds. And then I probably already addressed this a little. So we are not talking about this circle really, like from institution to Wikimedia and from Wikimedia back. We are probably talking about something like this. So there are tools, applications, interfaces, platform services that all do different kinds of things. They exchange information with each other, with some other platforms, and they gradually enrich this information. But we are all the time dealing with multiple copies of everything and multiple genealogies or provenances. Anyway, well, something to think about. But I think, yeah, I'll probably give it to Andrew soon, but I think Andrew was just pointing out just recently that this inner circle is also now very important. So how do we make also these Wikimedia projects be able to be uniform with each other? And I think I can leave it to that. I'll go back to the case studies later. So I think I will thank you at this point and give it over to the next speakers. And yeah.
Andrew here. Thank you, Susanna. We'll come back later to the other slides.
Yep.
Thank you, Andrew. The floor is yours.
Hi, great being with you. And I don't know if Richard is around. We can also bring him up because I might be calling on him to comment very quickly, or not quickly, but in the near future about image uploading. So I'm Andrew Lih, the Wikimedia strategist with the Met Museum, working on a lot of this data round-tripping work. Richard, why don't you introduce yourself quickly?
Hi, Richard Knipel, user Pharos, Wikimedia resident with the Met, working with Andrew on a lot of these topics.
Great. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the efforts we've been doing here. They started comprehensively in 2017 when Richard was a Wikimedia in residence and worked hard with a lot of folks to upload thousands and thousands of images from the Met that they'd released under open access license. And that is something that formed the basis of what we're doing for the work that we have now. Actually, let me reload this real quick. If you want to look at these slides, you can go to bit.ly/ it's a very long string, but it makes sense. Wikidata Lab Roundtripping-Met as in Met Museum. So Wikidata Lab Roundtripping-Met. So I don't know, Éder, you might want to put that on the screen at some point if you want for a lower third in the thing. So Wikidata Lab Roundtripping-Met. And what we thought we'd do very quickly is just to tell you a little bit about what we've been up to with this definition of data round tripping, because there's no solid definition of this that everyone agrees on, but I think the way that we define it is hopefully a virtuous cycle of bidirectional data sharing and enhancement between an institution and the Wikimedia community, right? It doesn't even have to be an institution, an entity and the Wikimedia community. That's basically what we're talking about here, is that's not one-way contribution. It's kind of a data dialogue or data conversation that enhances both sides. And I think we've reached a point where we're seeing that in a very significant way. So for example, it might be step one being the contribution of data or multimedia content from a GLAM institution. Once that content is in the Wikimedia ecosystem, we're typically seeing Wikimedians organize it in categories or putting it into Wikipedia articles, normalizing the content. So maybe the Met or the Smithsonian or the Louvre view something as a painting or a manuscript or a scroll, and to normalize that view of data against Wikidata, or how we do it in Wikidata, is a task we do all the time. Hopefully enriching that content with new metadata or new content, integrating it into other projects, and then hopefully in step three, that new content or the value add that the Wikimedia community has brought in is now brought back into the GLAM entity. And we've already seen this in small doses where even back to 2010, 2012, when we first started doing a lot of GLAM work, that users in the Wikimedia Commons would download images and restore them, right? There were a lot of high resolution images from the National Archives in the United States, for example. And there's a famous case where one of our Wikimedians actually identified an error in the caption of an image from the National Archives saying, oh, by the way, that's not just a pile of garbage. There's actually a human body in there. And the National Archives is very famous for writing back to the Wikimedia and saying, thank you very much. We're going to go change our metadata right now, because they take human remains very seriously in the archival space. So that was a very basic case of data round tripping, of the image being released, but our scores of volunteers could identify things and bring things to attention. And they really appreciated that function. So the question now with data round tripping is, how do you do this at scale? It's not just one person looking at one image, but what are comprehensive ways we can move the data back and forth? So here's just some examples. I think these are the ones that we found are the most interesting. So maybe I can get Richard to talk very quickly about kind of the first, most basic thing that most GLAM institutions will do is just say, hey, here are images, feel free to use them. So maybe Richard, what was the task in 2017? What were the tools that you used back then?
Yeah. The task and the tools were aligned around, there was a decision made to release the images that the images of public domain artworks that the Met had taken, their own photographs taken over the years, some contemporary, some more historic, and the idea was to find, the way they stored their metadata and how we could as closely match that as possible to, say, at the time we were working just on Commons, not with Wikidata, which fields could be translated, which fields could not be translated, which fields should we just turn into a text box, which is, the fallback, just so, and hopefully, we use the GLAM-Wiki tool set and upload, various tens of thousands of images. And some things went wrong. Users helped correct them. Users helped categorize them in new ways. Help find, it was elsewhere on Commons, was there a similar image or the exact same image? How should it be grouped together? How should it be categorized? Which of these artworks should have articles? And we have there are different programs to encourage people to write articles about artworks or about genres that artworks represent. So there's quite an interesting diversity of seeing, what is in this artwork and what type of artwork is this, how should it be grouped, and how is it represented. But of course, these tools, the GLAM world, the WikiGLAM world, has since shifted a bit. It's become more Wikidata focused, and we recently become more structured data on commons focused. So less focused on things like categories, more on saying, putting structured data about who is in the death of Socrates, and what are they doing and what are they wearing. And also, I guess something that is relevant that is relatively new is documenting, because especially a collection like the Met, there are a lot of different photographs of things, and especially for like a three-dimensional artwork from different angles, because the Met is an old institution. It's from different time periods. Some are in black and white. Some are from like books. There's all sorts of different ways, and that hasn't quite been sorted out. But there are many different views, and this is something that. And some of them are good views, and some of them are not such good views. This is something that Sarah Sturch, a Wikimedian, called the yellow milkmaid problem, because sometimes the milkmaid, which should be wearing white, who should be wearing white, is wearing something that looks like yellow, and something that we have to work on totally as an anthology of all of the ways that artwork can be represented and misrepresented and just represented at different time periods.
Yeah, this is a great example of what Richard facilitated back in 2017. So if you look at the bottom of a Commons file from the Met that was uploaded with this initial load, it has GW toolset. So that was one of the original bulk uploaders of content called the GLAM-Wiki toolset, which was funded by Europeana and Wikimedia Foundation grants, right? And that's something that was a workhorse back in the day. But this tool is no longer used because it's kind of an older, unmaintained tool. We can talk later on about what are some of the best practices that we have now. But you can see that one of the benefits of uploading from the Met comprehensively is you get all this great content here, right? You get a lot of metadata that is rich and being sourced from the Met's database there, and you get high quality images on Commons. So if we go back to the other types of ways to contribute content, one of the things that's useful is, sometimes just basic ontologies. Contributing how content is organized for a GLAM institution might be useful for Wikidata and how we do things. And we do this all the time, saying, we're trying to organize things in Wikidata. How do these libraries and institutions organize the content? And how do we create a model that best captures the best in breed or best in class thinking about things right now? Another thing is just looking at the database, what we call crosswalking. In data science or library science, this is just the idea that I've got a list of things with my identifiers. Like I call this an afternoon dress. What is it called in Wikidata? Does Wikidata call it an afternoon dress, or is it just a dress with an afternoon use, right? So basically trying to align my vocabulary as a GLAM institution with the vocabulary in Wikidata is generally what you call a crosswalk database. And having that crosswalk allows you to now bulk upload content in a comprehensive way by mapping them to QIDs in Wikidata. So that's something that we spend a lot of our time on, is just in the pre-work, is making sure all the terms are mapped over well. And I just mentioned before about how some institutions will call a manuscript leaf, like one page from a book that has really fancy drawings, a painting, and other museums will not call it a painting. So that's kind of a headache, right, Richard, in terms of how we model these things.
And what's a painting and what's a drawing, and what particular materials do you put on the end of the brush that makes it a painting or a drawing, and where does the chemical composition change? And of course, fashion. We've talked a little bit about fashion issues. That's extremely complicated. Not everything not something that is well documented on Wikimedia at all. And sort of finding some universality for it has proven difficult, but we've made a lot of progress with that.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally, what kind of things can you do to enhance the data, like kind of that goes beyond what the museum has? One very useful use case for this was very early on when the Smithsonian, when we were working with them on a project for like Black History Month or for Women's History Month, they don't hold gender or ethnicity in their database, and probably for good reason. This is not easy stuff. In fact, we're struggling with it as well in Wikidata, but it's really useful for them at least to come up with initial lists to say, hey, if we're celebrating Black History Month, where are all the Black artists in our collection? And they don't have a way of doing it for very famous museums. They have a person with a with a spreadsheet, I'm sorry, printed sheet and penciling next to the people, I think this is a person who's African American, because they just don't have a database with that column in it. And this might be a best practice for museums because it's fraught with lots of problems, but at least Wikidata gives us a start on this, and maybe the enhancement of those columns and that data from other institutions can help create something in Wikidata that's useful for these folks. So these are just some basic examples of how these areas of collaboration have been rich in the past. So if you want to take a look, there's also a talk that Richard and I did in WikidataCon 2019 at WikidataCon 19 GLAM strategies, and that has basically this chart at the heart of it. And we don't expect you to understand this, but we thought it was really useful to put in one place, kind of where all the tools and the best practices and the types of discussions are going on. So if you want to kind of look at the whole chain of contribution from kind of the pre-planning and reconciling to the ingesting and the enrichment of data, this is kind of the place to go. So if you go to Wikidata linked open data workflow, this doesn't specifically talk about round tripping, but it is kind of the best of where all the tools are described, and you can kind of click on those and investigate all the tools there. All right, so let's show you what we kind of work with in the Wikidata world as the Met Museum. As many of you know, the Met has one of the most comprehensive encyclopedic art collections in the world. So we have to be ready to deal with one of, what, Richard, 17 departments, right, at the Met?
Yeah, it goes up and down.
Yeah, so we're talking like anything from fashion to abstract art to, you know, artifacts.
All the departments have changed over time, and so some of them have merged, they unmerged.
Yes, exactly. Then trying to track all those things over time is really, really interesting. So ideally, we'd like to have an item in Wikidata for a significant or notable artwork that has labels, description, aliases, right? The things you want to see in a Wikidata item. And then a bunch of statements and claims, external identifiers. So hopefully, you know, things that help us connect these to other data sets out there in the world. And then site links to Wikimedia content, right? So those are kind of the four basic areas of a Wikidata item. So for example, the death of Socrates that we showed before, we'd like to see this. And typically what we will do, in fact, we're not even showing a great example here, is we'll not only have the title, we'll have in the description, painting by this person at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and then we put the accession number out there. Because imagine the number of artworks that are called Untitled, or Table with Flowers, or, you know, some basic general title. Yeah. And even within the Met, right, Richard, we have multiple things by the same artist with the exact same title.
Yeah, it's extremely common, you know, man wearing hat. I mean, just you know, this god or this saint. It's quite, and even, you know, they don't. Different publications disagree. I mean, and it's important to give both the institutional name and also any other names. So that the nice thing about Wikidata is we do accept multiple names, and we also keep a canonical ID.
Right. So I think there's an old snapshot here, but we'd like to put a accession number or inventory number at the end to truly make it unique in the description so people know what you're talking about. So these are kind of the core properties. We want to make sure we have instance of, image, if it exists, or it's OA or open access. Inception, like, well, do we have a date for this thing? Creator. Dimensions are kind of tricky. Dimensions are really hard, actually, because with height, depth, and in fact, if you look across museums, they don't do this in a consistent way either. So we have in the Wikidata, fortunately or unfortunately, broken down dimensions to width, height, depth, length, and those are not always easy to map to from museum collections. Collection, meaning, you know, not only the entity that owns it, maybe the department that owns it, and then the inventory number. So those are kind of the ones in blue. And then ideally, we'd like to try to get more information that's things are like in red, like it depicts something, the copyright status, height and width, as we said. So how do we do this? Well, for some folks in data science, you may know the term ETL, which stands for extract, transform, and load, which is kind of a one-way ingestion of content. The Wikidata or Wikimedia parlance might be prepare your content, reconcile it, so see how your data set at your GLAM institutions aligns with what's in Wikidata, and then ingest it into Wikidata. So here's some examples of how we've done it in the past. So the Met publishes its metadata in both a CSV format, which is like, you know, comma separated value, like a gigantic spreadsheet. And though the Met is big, it's only 600,000 rows in this CSV file. So that will probably blow up your Excel program, but it's actually not that big in the world of big data or data science. So you can actually suck the entire CSV database into memory on a computer and do cool things with it. The Met also publishes an API. So an API stands for Application Programming Interface, meaning you can kind of grab all the data for one item here, one item there, or 10 items there. But you probably don't want to use an API for 600,000 items because it takes a long time to cycle through them. So we kind of have the best of both worlds in having a CSV file as the bulk data and an API, which allows us kind of 1Z, 2Z access to comprehensive content. What we typically do is we'll suck the entire database into a Python system. And we use a system called Pandas, and we can talk about this a little bit later if Éder is around, because I know Éder is very interested in talking about Python in the loop here. And then we can actually do a massive query of Wikidata saying, bring me back all the Met objects from Wikidata. And it's not terrible to bring back like 50,000 rows from Wikidata. It's actually pretty simple. And then you compare the two, what we call bidirectional diff, and then we can actually spit out things that we should improve in Wikidata or things that are inconsistent between the two, and we want to resolve them. And that's kind of what we do. And we don't do this like on a nightly basis or anything. We do it on an occasional basis because we need to have some human intervention to make sure this works correctly. But what we'll do is for anything that's major in terms of a modeling problem or major problems, we'll basically have a team meeting with, Richard, myself, and the folks at the Met, Jeannie Choi, who's like the database manager, and we'll figure out ways to solve these things. Which is pretty cool. But then we can actually resolve these by running quick statements for a batch updating Wikidata. We can run a bot, which can comprehensively go through each item and make smart decisions saying, oh, if we have this inconsistency, do this, or if we're missing this data, do that. So the nice thing about writing a bot is you can put some logic in there and do some more sophisticated editing. Or we can throw the question results into a game interface. We can say, this is not simple, but we have a smart community. We can throw the possibilities into a game interface and say, hey, volunteers, help us with this task that's a little bit complex. And people can run the game and say, yes, make this edit. No, don't make that edit. So that's another way for people to contribute. And then we also have other enhancement tools that people can maybe run to help these things out. All right, so here's an example of what this kind of looks like. I know this may look a little bit dizzying, but it's actually not that hard. Basically, we start on the left-hand side here with a Met database, right? We have this CSV file or a spreadsheet. And then we kind of use this crosswalk database to say, hey, when the Met says evening dress, we actually don't have an entry for evening dress in Wikidata currently, but we do have an entry for dress. We have a QID for dress, but then we can also add a qualifier that has, evening wear as its qualifier, right? So that's how we model evening dress, is dress with a qualifier of used in the evening. And we have the same thing for day dress and other things like that. But in the future, if we decide we want evening dress as its own QID, we can change this crosswalk database and change the mapping, right? Then what happens is once we have mapped over that content from the Met side to the crosswalk, we can now generate quick statements, which is nice because that means that we can make a tool one can just kind of process and run quick. It doesn't have to be someone who knows how to code and all that stuff. So that's one way of doing it is Met database, crosswalk database, and then generate the quick statements that allow you to modify the records to match those things. Similarly, we do have a crosswalk database for like artists that are in the Met database in Wikidata. So that's the benefit of having this crosswalk database. And we can talk a little bit more about the details later, but we use Python a lot. Python is a programming language, and then we also have a Python environment for the Wikimedia community, PAWS, so paws.wmcloud.org. And Susanna and I just spent this past weekend on a remote hackathon working with PAWS and how to do this round-tripping better. So we can talk more about that as well. All right, so what are some of the benefits of doing this? Well, if we can add depiction information and relationships here, we can do all kinds of cool things like run a knowledge graph. So if anyone has an iPhone or something, you can go ahead and snap that QR code. Android works as well, although it's not as simple as with an iPhone. You can snap that QR code and you should get a beautiful knowledge graph like this, which is really cool, right? So it's actually live. This is actually doing a live Wikidata query. And it's basically showing you the artist John Singer Sargent was the painter of this, which is a Met artwork right there, Portrait of Madame X. But you can also see that he painted other things like a study of that work, and that's at the Tate Museum. And you can see some other ones here in terms of artworks that he created and what art museums they're at too. And you can also see that this painting was actually the inspiration for the black dress worn by Rita Hayworth in the movie Gilda. And this is all because it's all connected through Wikidata. So we're already seeing kind of the benefits of this. And the Met folks were like, that's cool. I didn't know that this dress in our painting, in our collection, was the inspiration for such a well-known work by Rita Hayworth. So this is already showing the benefits of connecting the data with the comprehensive data that's in Wikidata. And you can also see that this is the woman portrayed in the image, and you can see other artworks by her and where they're located. So it kind of shows you the cool things you can do once you've connected your data set to Wikidata. And this is, again, live on Wikidata. Our phones are powerful enough that if you're seeing this on an iPhone, you can actually browse and drag these nodes around, which is really cool. You can even start browsing more. You can click on this, and you can start browsing Wikidata just by clicking on nodes. And I find this really fun. So you can actually go through here and say, let's look at the Frick reference library and start browsing and discovering new things. So it's kind of like the wiki wormhole that a lot of you know about by clicking on article by article by article in Wikipedia. But now you can click on nodes and explore Wikidata through this interface, which is pretty cool. All right, so Wikidata knowledge graphs are already a yield of the data round tripping contributions from the GLAM institution, and now they get insights into their data they never knew before. So that's already a good round trip. That's right there. Now, those things that we talked about, let's go back here for a second. This crosswalk, the cool thing is that doesn't need to exist as a separate database there in between Wikidata and the Met. No, the cool thing is the Met has actually brought that knowledge into its own database. This is the ultimate goal of data round tripping in many ways, right? So what happens is the Met now returns Wikidata items when you query it, which is really cool. So this is the output of a API call to the Met. So even if you're not well-versed in this format that comes back, which is called JSON, JSON, you can already see this is interesting, right? Because not only are you saying, oh, by the way, this artwork, Death of Socrates, is created by Jacques-Louis David, which is here as a constituent, it's giving you the Wikidata Q number. So this is really cool. Like when we started this project 2 years ago, all we had was Jacques-Louis David, and like, okay, I hope it is this guy and this Q number, and it was. And then now the Met is ingesting that Q number back into its own database. So as many of you know, museums tend to use a system called TMS, which is like their content management system or asset management system. So they're pulling Q numbers back and holding those Q numbers in their TMS, which is awesome. Same thing happening with depiction information. You can see that this thing here, this image depicts Socrates, sadness, sadness, Richard. We'll have to think about that. Men. And we map those to Q numbers. We said, okay, Socrates in our database is Q913, and sadness was this one. We tend not to depict emotion so much. We really do the nuts and bolts. But hey, yeah, we might have to round trip the thinking on that one. Yeah. And then it depicts man. But the cool thing is now the Met is holding those Q numbers as well. So it's hyper precise, because without those Q numbers, we're not sure whether bird, or actually one thing that's very common, Richard, right, is like if you say salmon, oh my God, like, do you mean the scientific salmon, or do you mean the salmon most people think about?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it like, which species of salmon? And is there like a particular like European or American or Asian version of salmon that you're referring to? And maybe there's like a superset of salmon that could be one of these species in this region. And so, yeah, I always wonder about that. But
yeah. So if anyone's ever tried like depicts a dog or a cat or a salmon, is like, this is not easy stuff. Like you're talking about house cat, or you're talking about the feline taxonomic,
the most common one, tree, depicts tree, like which tree, what type of, they're like, how many different types of these types of trees and regions. And,
right. So it's important for us to know hyper specifically here. And that's why the Q number is being held at the Met and being returned in their API is really, really useful. And then they also hold the object Wikidata URL, the last one here. So this is really strong links between the Met and Wikidata, stronger than any GLAM institution I'm aware of. So there are some folks like Yale Center for British Art, and these folks might hold Q numbers. They use a combination of Q numbers and other things. But I think the Met is the entity using this in the most comprehensive way for not only depiction information, which you can kind of view as minor information, but the object itself and the creator and constituents are being hard connected. That's really significant, I think.
Some others have used it for creators. I know, I think MoMA, for example, used it for a number of years for creators, because they also have the issue of they don't keep biographical information, or there's some different issues with that.
Exactly. And if you want to inspect it, there's the URL to the API that's right there. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention is, look at this. They also used Wikidata to map to the Getty identifiers. So Getty identifiers, what they call the Getty art vocabulary, is highly, highly used in the art world and the museum world, except it's so big and unwieldy that most people don't know how to use it, right? It's actually too big in many ways. So by using a subset of it, the Met only uses about 1,200 terms for its depiction information or its depiction vocabulary. We're using a smaller set, but you can actually see the AAT, that stands for Art and Architecture Thesaurus. So you're not only getting the Wikidata Q number, you're getting the AAT, which is the Art and Architecture Thesaurus, and their number. And on top of that, you have the ULAN, which stands for Union List of Artist Names, which means that you can actually get individual people identifiers as well. So this is really encouraging to anyone who's interested in art history or the precision of the metadata. All right, so we're getting close to the end of what we want to talk about, but I think the real key thing here is that once we have all this rich data being exchanged for both sides, we really would love to get this in the hands of more people to do interesting things. So one of the things we did the hackathon, the Wikimedia hackathon this weekend, was trying to see how can we get programming capabilities into the hands of non-programmers. So UV Panda, who's one of the guys who's been really key in pushing this idea in the Wikimedia community by installing that pause Python system, has a great line in his Twitter handle that Susanna highlighted recently, saying he wants to liberate programming from the programmers. Now, it sounds really weird. It's like, well, if you're a programmer, why would you want to liberate it? But the idea is, can we get great capabilities and powerful capabilities in the hands of people who are typically not programmers? And I like to kind of describe this as the coding chasm, which means that we have some really good tools for folks who don't know how to code, like quick statements, really powerful for people who don't know how to code, because you can make batch jobs to add thousands and thousands of things to Wikidata. But if you need to go a little bit beyond that, like you might want to say, if this exists already, do this. If it doesn't exist already, do that. Quick statements cannot do that, right? Quick statements is do exactly as I say. And how do we get this, what we call kind of conditional programming, into the hands of ordinary people? And that's not easy traditionally, but I think we are turning the corner and providing tools like Pause, which is a Python environment, to get this access into more people's hands. So let me show you some examples of how this might take place. So this is something we worked on this past weekend to say, hey, how can we get really powerful tools in the hands of folks? So let me show you the tool that I created recently, and is not that hard. It's only 200 lines of code. And in fact, it's actually less than that. It's like 150 if you take out comments and extra stuff. So you can actually create a tool here. Let me show you very quickly. This is the Pause environment here. But if I go down here and I run this code, and what it's doing is going out to Wikidata and it's grabbing all the artists, all the artworks in the Met, and all the unique artists that they have. And what happens here is you can actually browse the knowledge graphs for these artists. So if I go in here and I'm looking at, let's say, the artists that you see here, let's choose one I'm hoping will not blow up my browser here, because browsing all the artworks of Van Gogh will not really do us well here. Let's see. Let's choose one with images. And any favorite ones, Richard? Let's go down and look at Rauschenberg is too modern. Let's take a look. Oh, Jasper John's too modern too.
Yeah,
Thomas Cole. Here we go. American artist here. So what happens is this is actually looking at all the artworks of Thomas Cole in Wikidata, which is really cool, right? So it's generating that live Wikidata graph. But the cool thing is here, I can also say, well, I only want to see the Met Museum ones. So boom, there are the Met Museum ones. So it's filtering out, basically doing a faceted knowledge graph browsing here. I can also say, no, let's look at the ones that are in the, let's say, Cleveland Museum of Art. I can say, oh, yeah, Cleveland has those. But the cool thing is I can also say, show me the ones in Cleveland and Met Museum. I can actually click on both of those. So I can actually go in here and say, oops, Met Museum. And I can say, add Cleveland Museum to that set as well. And I'm adding both those together. I can say, let me see Yale University Gallery of Art. And there's more there. So this is really neat in that I only need like 200 lines of code to implement this whole thing, because all I'm doing is I'm providing a front end to call Wikidata. So let me go ahead and go back to Okay, National Gallery of Art. Let's go to the Met Museum. But I can now look at some of the other ones like René Magritte. As you can see, not too many from him. Poussin, you can see that. So this is what I'd love to put in the hands of more people. Not only the tool, but the ability to program this tool. It's not that hard if you kind of know what you're looking for. And this whole programming environment, what we call Jupyter widgets, allows us to do that with not too many lines of code. So
I just got an idea looking at this now.
Mhm.
I think we should expand our Hollywood fandom and make a list of actors and actresses and the works where they depict historical characters that are in, say, museum's collection.
Oh, nice.
That's one way to do.
Yeah. I mean, this browser is for artists and institutions, but there's no reason why it couldn't be used for books, for anything that's in Wikidata. So providing a generic framework to just browse collections of stuff, Wikidata, that's kind of my dream goal for a tool like that. And then just very quickly, the last thing I'll talk about is just kind of our experiment in AI machine learning that, the Met had a comprehensive list of all the keywords for their artworks and contributed those keywords to Wikidata, saying, hey, we paid a team of 50 plus people for half a year to tag all of its artworks. Now, what can we do with that? And I'm like, oh, well, we could definitely use that in Wikidata. So we mapped all those things to Wikidata Q items, and we're comprehensively adding all that content to Wikidata. And if you train a machine learning system with that, you can actually feed new artworks into this machine learning system it had never seen before and come up with hopefully good depiction suggestions for Wikidata. That's basically what we did. We said, let's bring in all the Met artworks, bring in all the keyword tags, put them into a machine learning system, and then we spit out the recommendations. And we didn't want just to add them willy-nilly. We wanted for some human eyeballs to look at them and say, good idea, bad idea, right? So, Richard, what did we do? Tell us what this night was about.
So there was an evening, sort of a gala-like evening where people presented different art and technology projects, working with artificial intelligence, and this is supported by Microsoft. And there was, in this case, we just presented some of the suggestions from the artificial intelligence about what is in this particular artwork. Does this have a tree? Does this have a soldier? Does this have this or that? And we gave it out to people, and they could just sort of click yes or no, and help fill it out, help develop that, give it a little human machine intelligence combined. And it was a nice little people were sort of, it was a nice experiment. We did it online, of course, as well, but it was nice to sort of experiment with it in person, and people to sort of see and feel the machine interaction there.
Yeah, and I thought it was really cool that we finished this tool like days beforehand, and we tested online with some of our community, and they're like, yeah, it seems to work. And then what happened is we had this cocktail party in the grand hall of the Met, and we had people who knew nothing about Wikidata. They haven't even heard the word Wikidata before. Yet here they were walking up to kiosks, and we were there just saying, hey, look at the image, and if it says there's a tree there, you either agree with it or disagree, and that's all you need to do. No login. I don't have to tell you what Wikidata is. You don't have to know what a Q number is. You don't even know the artist's name. You just, human being, you're pretty smart. Tell us whether there's a tree or not in this painting. And, that evening, I think we had like more than about 1,000 decisions being made by folks holding champagne glasses, just walking up and trying out the kiosk. And that added a lot of meaningful metadata to Wikidata directly.
And sort of building on the sort of citizen science model, and hopefully hopefully we can get some of that in the wiki world. It's like been a big parallel development in science and art and humanities that has been mostly outside the Wikimedia movement. But if we can incorporate some of that into the Wikimedia movement, I think we're doing well.
Yeah, we haven't gone back. I mean, obviously COVID makes it impossible to have the same cocktail party again. We'd love to do it again with some more comprehensive results. So the result is that we get a lot of interesting stuff. So not only did it allow us to add metadata to paintings in Wikidata from other institutions using the Met data as a training set, but it actually could add more more metadata and depiction information to Met paintings, because they actually had kind of a limit of we only want 3 tags by the tagging team, right? Because they didn't want to spend tons of time on each one. They want 3 to 5 tags per artwork that by that tagging team just to keep things moving along. But the cool thing is that AI could come along with this second sweep and actually recommend more things that the initial taggers didn't put in as the metadata. So that's another round tripping application that's there. And then finally, just to allude to some things that Susanna mentioned, just the idea that just having sheep as the metadata may not be the most useful thing. We can have our crew, our volunteers, help put bounding boxes around exactly where's the sheep. And we actually have tools like Wikidata image positions or the image annotator by Albin. Is this by Albin? I think it is, Susanna. Remind me when we start the discussion. I think it was, to draw bounding boxes. And this helps enhance the metadata, right? So again, the Met contributes, it depicts a sheep. Our community says, yeah, it depicts a sheep in this bounding box. And the Met can re-ingest that to get better accuracy for its content. So just to sum up this kind of virtuous cycle back and forth, as we said, 2017 marked the contribution of images, and that helped us enhance and enrich Wikipedia articles. So it's kind of a one dimension or one direction. Then the Met released their comprehensive metadata, and that was great because it allowed for the creation of Wikidata items and we started off with kind of the best of works from the Met, what we call the highlights in the timeline of art history. But what that allowed us to do by building up that collection was now to work with tags and depiction information, right? So the Met had that tagging project, which added keywords to all the artworks. We created a crosswalk database to say, oh, your cow is this Q number. Your dog is this Q number. And that allowed us to make this crosswalk and solidify all this depiction information. Now we actually had this AI project, which kind of brought it back the other direction. We said, oh, well, we can use all this information to do this AI project and get our crowd to verify these predictions from the machine learning. So that is a flow in the other direction. And then now we can have our crew use those image annotation tools to put bounding boxes around those recommendations. And then the Met can ingest that. And then now we can create really cool visual visualizations from all this stuff. So you can see there's a dialogue of data coming back and forth. And this was not imaginable maybe 5-10 years ago when we're in the heart of GLAM. So I'm really encouraged to see this kind of stuff happening right now. And future work. Well, some things that Susanna mentioned as well in terms of the limitations of this. One, we need to document better practices, right? So a lot of this is just in slides. We need to put them on Wiki to show people exactly what we're doing. Two, it'd be nice to say that this custom system we have now for crosswalk mapping, we make that into a generic framework that other people can use. Like it is GitHub, open source release, but it's kind of a mangle of code. I completely blame myself about that. But we need to make it more generic framework to say any GLAM institution can walk up and say, here's my API, here's my crosswalk. I'm going to give you those two things, and then we can start ingesting stuff into Wikidata. It should be that easy, but right now it's not. And then the rich image upload tool. The image upload tools is a real pain right now, right? Because GLAM-Wiki toolset, as we mentioned, is no longer alive. PattyPan, the tool that we use to upload images via spreadsheet to Commons, apparently is reaching the end of its life and will not be developed anymore. So we're potentially in a situation where we have fewer tools for image uploads than we had in the past. And also, these tools were not aware of the newest technologies like structured data on Commons, which is adding like Wikidata-like content to Commons, right? So a new tool that allows for uploading structured data at the same time and not as an afterthought would be really nice. As Susanna said, tracking the provenance and the chain of verification for all this metadata is really needed, right? So when we have an AI add something to Wikidata, we'd like to flag that as like, this is a machine generated. It's not some expert in art history that generated this, right? So we need to have a good way of having the chain of verification throughout Commons and Wikidata. But one of the biggest problems is right now, structured data on Commons has no support for reference statements. Yikes. So we're already running to that right now where we have this clash, and I'm still trying to figure it out, where I'm adding content to Wikidata and adding content to structured data on Commons, and you need to use two completely different methods to document where that data came from, even if they're from the same source, right? Because Wikidata folks like the reference statements. With structured data on Commons doesn't have the reference statement, so you need to use a different method, which means now if you want to query on Wikidata and Commons, you need two completely different queries. I don't think it takes a genius to understand that's not a desirable outcome. So those are the challenges going forward, and I look forward to any discussion from Éder and Susanna about what are the best next steps here, because I think there's some really interesting questions about like, where are the cool places to operate right now, and what should we be putting our labor and our energy behind. So I look forward to that discussion.
Thanks. Yeah, forward to it as well.
Thank you, Andrew and Richard. I think we have some questions. I will add Susanna as well. I think the first one is for her. Let me find it. The first is a comment.
I didn't even look at the questions. I see some really good questions coming through here. That's great.
The first from João is a comment. Susanna, one aspect about your image with the circles is that Wikipedia does not exist as a single entity. We need round-tripping across Wikipedias. This is different with Wikimedia Commons and Wikidata.
That is so true. And there are initiatives that I warm-heartedly support, such as the global templates and that work, which is to unify the practices across Wikipedias. Probably, and unfortunately, it's not the easiest task on the planet to make the Wikipedias agree on practices, but this is definitely a goal that I support, and I hope that would happen. So make some uniform technology and practices available across Wikipedias. Yeah, actually, I should have added all the how many are they? 300 Wikipedias along that circle, the inner circle.
Yeah. There's a question from Yamin that interesting too, Andrew, is the URL public. I think about the Wikidata game.
Oh, the Wikidata game. Yes. So the Wikidata game, unfortunately, our community was so productive. You've exhausted all of our AI candidates. So we're victim of our own success. We generated like 7,000 recommendations out of the machine learning system. And we found out that the best performing ones were like landscape painting features, which kind of makes sense, like trees, mountains, bridges, houses, horses, soldiers. And we fed in like all these paintings from Cleveland Museum of Art, Rijksmuseum, everything. And we generated 7,000 recommendations. And then our wonderful community went through the Wikidata game and like processed them all and created 5,000 new depiction statements, which is pretty cool. But so our dream is to kind of go back and do this again with other data sets. But I agree, I would love to show it more, but we're out of candidates, so we got to do more. If you want to run the browser, I think, I don't know if the question is about the Wikidata graph browser, but if you want to go back to the slide deck, there's a link to a live link where you can try that out. And then Joao mentioned, can you explain more precisely how this machine learning tool is developed? Where is it? How is it coded? How do you know it has learned? Ooh, that's always a philosophical question. Like, how do you know the ML is doing what it's doing? And the answer is we never will know what the ML is thinking, but we can only measure its outputs, and the outputs were pretty good for landscape. The funny thing about, and it's completely understandable once you get it, it's amazing. And learning from ML or seeing what the ML puts out is like talking to like a 5-year-old, and you're like, why would you? Oh, that's a good, that wrong answer is actually a very valid wrong answer. So what happened was they got equestrianism, right? Men riding horses to hunt foxes, mixed up with soldiers who are what? Men riding horses with a rifle to shoot someone, right? And that was fascinating that it got those things mixed up quite a bit. And probably my 5-year-old kid would get a hunter chasing after a fox mixed up with a soldier riding a horse to kill someone. So it's very interesting to see what the ML came up with. Another thing that we abandoned very quickly was gender determination, right? So saying, is this person in the picture a man or a woman, man or a woman? And I got to say, we were very disappointed at the beginning. Like, oh my God, this is such a disaster. It's what they call in AI cringeworthy AI, when it makes it, terrible results. We cannot do men, women determination. And the interesting thing is, like, later that year, Google shut off gender determination in its AI. Because it is non-useful. It uncontextualized, is non-useful to look at an image purely by pixels and say that's a man and that's a woman.
That's
right.
It's
disaster. So we're heartened because we thought, wow, our training data is not good enough to do man woman. And Google, in all its wisdom, basically said, not a useful exercise to look at the pure pixels of an image and to say man or woman. And that's interesting. So those are some of the things that we learned from it. And basically, we used a system called and it's kind of the same across all the services. Like if you look at Google, Amazon, Microsoft, it's all kind of like Coke, Pepsi. It's the same type of stuff. Everyone's using the same training data. Everyone's using the same basic AI, open source system for doing called, TensorFlow. And what you're doing is you're just training the last portion of the AI called the prediction layer. Like all the other stuff is really well done and really built up for generic image recognition, and you're training the last what they call prediction layer for like artworks and things like that. So we used Azure from Microsoft, machine vision, and you could use Google Cloud Platform. You could use Amazon. They're all going to have very similar results if you use the training data the same.
So you use a system of machine learning to your input on this system is the predictions, is the tags that are already on the museum database.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they did this tagging project where they hired a team of people to sort of go through and mark it in all these ways. Does this include a tree? Does it include a soldier? Does this include a horse? And so the AI was sort of trying to simulate the people who did that. And of course it showed the limitations of that. Obviously it's not appropriate to apply it to gender. It works fairly well for horses, but and trees. But it's basically what the humans who put those tags would do. So it's the limitations of that, and so that's why it's marked by other humans. And probably there should be a multi-human consensus system, but that doesn't quite exist on Wikidata yet.
Yeah, but that's what Susanna alluded to as well, right? Can we have like ML says this, our community says that, and something else says that? We can triangulate on the best answer in the middle. And for doing that, we need that provenance information, right? So you can say, like, if one ML says yes and a human says yes and some kind of expert says yes, we're very confident in that answer. But if like 3 ML systems say yes, we're like, no, we need like at least one human to look at this thing, right? And that's why you want that provenance information in the metadata. And I think we're pretty immature right now in making sure that is done well.
I would like to ask, there are other questions though, but maybe I'll just do it for variance. What kind of strategies do you find? Because you have good computational resources and institutional resources at hand, but how would you sell data round tripping for an institution with one person doing all the tasks in the museum with a spreadsheet? So I mean, because this is also the wiki way of doing things, that we do have ways of leveraging difficult things.
I mean, to some extent, I think it might be more valuable to a smaller institution, especially getting because I mean, not every institution has the capacity like the method to hire a team to go through tens of thousands of images and say which ones had the trees and which ones had the horses. So if you can either share that with the Wikimedia community, and maybe the community can help mark some of those, or using things like machine learning from others, it potentially it could be relatively a greater impact on smaller collections and collections that have fewer of their own technical and monetary resources.
Yeah. Actually, this maybe brings us back to displaying the results of our thought process this last week and last weekend. But maybe there's another question from João. So maybe we will go back to...
I'll skip a line from João and ask Andrew and Richard, how many contributions coming from these Wikimedia activities are actually incorporated in the local database from the Met? Is there many?
Well, as of the beginning of this year, a lot. So you can see that if you just do a back of the napkin calculation of this, if we want to do some quick math, and my math is kind of rusty, but let's say Met API. So there's our API. Okay, so we're looking at a general thing that comes back. This is the live API, if you're hitting it. So we're seeing, the Wikidata item, that's 1. And then you can see here's another Wikidata, 2, 3, 4. So average of 3 tags, let's say. And then a constituent ID, right? The artist. So here's David. So let's say roughly 5 to 7 Q numbers. Let's say 7 Q numbers times, 600,000 or 500,000, let's say. So there you are. 3 million Q numbers are being served up by, or being stored in the Met database, roughly. So that's not bad. Yeah.
I guess we're not doing this much of the fine grained data, other than beyond the general Q number. And of course, you can find the stuff when you go to the Q number. Perhaps at some point it would make sense to say, what is, like, say, the tagging project. The tagging project has, a fair amount of imprecision. Things like the depiction, would that be important to the Met database at some point? Possibly at some point, not yet at this stage. But I think there are probably more systems that should be developed to enable that.
Maybe I'd like to ask also about tagging practices. You were referring to very precise tags earlier, and what we see generally in museum tagging is quite generic tags. And now we are also probably having different practices in Wikidata and Wikimedia Commons. So what is your take on this in general, and where can we take this discussion to?
Yeah, and I think that is related to what João has as other questions. What do you choose? What goes into, Wikidata or what round trips back? You're right, and we don't have great practices, to my knowledge, Susanna and Richard. Like we are not consistent in terms of saying this painting depicts this as its primary thing, and then this is a tiny thing in the background. Like we have ways of qualifying that, but we're not consistent whatsoever, right, in doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm also referring to the dog breed versus dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we need folk taxonomists of like medieval bestiaries to understand like the range of dogs. So if someone depicts a particular like a rat or something, I don't know what are the types of rats that they could be depicting in this time and place, and there's some sort of maybe there's like a folk there's an art taxonomy for dog that has to map somewhere onto the biological taxonomy for dog, and it's not quite at an obvious level.
Yeah, and we have the complication that on structured data and commons, we don't really expose a kind of a deeper search for like subclasses and things like that, right? So for better for worse, the current advice on commons or structured data and commons is to be exhaustive. Is to say dog and German Shepherd and maybe, I don't know, Alsatian. Are Alsatians always German Shepherds? I'm not sure. Are they somewhat the same or different?
Maybe it's a guard dog, or maybe it's maybe like what it's dog shop
exactly.
as well.
Yeah, you put like dog, guard dog, German Shepherd, Alsatian, like all the possible roles of that dog, because we don't have a way to do a sophisticated search in SDC. So that's something that is an unknown going forward. Like we don't have a feature specification exactly what to expect down the road for SDC. So right now, the advice is to be exhaustive, and it's kind of like we don't do that in Wikidata. We kind of depend on saying it's a German Shepherd, and if you're looking for all dogs, you're fine, because you'll do a P31, P279 search and you'll find it, right? But not for structured data on commons.
Yeah, but what I suggest here is that this is something that needs to be fleshed out and explained, and maybe in the hope of having it solved.
Yeah. Yeah. So just as you said, documenting these best practices, they're just kind of like folk knowledge right now. We haven't done a great job of putting them down on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have another question relating to the image recognition, the machine learning project. For what I can imagine, the components of that might be available for reuse and tinkering in the PAWS environment. Would that be the case? So
tinkering in PAWS, you said?
Yes. I'm not sure. I was speaking at the same time. Can you repeat?
You mean you're thinking that it could be used for tinkering in PAWS in the Python?
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. In fact, my first versions of that were written in PAWS, because the bulk of the work is not even done in PAWS or anything. It's just this engine on the back end where you say, here's an image, and then you get back like four strings. That's it. Like it'll say dog, bridge, tree, and it give you confidence vectors, right? So it'll give you, I'm 80% sure, I'm 50% sure, I'm 20% sure. And that's pretty much all these ML systems do, is you say, here's something, it'll give you a prediction with confidence levels, and that's it. And that's pretty easy to use in a PAWS environment. Yeah.
Just maybe to recap, with the whole idea is that there's a service that you can run. Anyone with a Wikimedia account can log into that system, and then there are scripts that do different things, like your script.
Right.
And you can just copy on your page, and it's a living document, like a Google Doc, which has a line of code, and then you press play and it executes it in front of your eyes, and you just copied it from somebody else's script, and then it does it. So understand this, and anybody can start doing the same. It's a magical thing.
I think you're right. I mean, that the dream is that we're not just a community of writers, and not just a community of uploaders, and not just a community of describers, but we're actually becoming a community of creators, right? A community of coders. And that is kind of the ultimate thing. Like in my talks, I normally talk about like how museums are trying to reach the elusive third step in engagement. So the 3 steps of engagement among museum types are like, you want to have people contribute, to collaborate, and then the magical third step that's hard is co-create. So I would say that we're very healthy in the Wikimedia sphere of contributing stuff, collaborating on stuff. When it comes to co-creation of stuff, just think about like if you want like interactive stuff on your Wikipedia article, you can't do it. Like you're stuck with the tools that we have for doing graphs and maps. In fact, our graphing tool is kind of showing its age in Wikipedia. So wouldn't it be nice if we had the capability for people to say, no, I want some interactive stuff. I want to create a graph browser. I want to create a machine learning system. And we're starting to get there, I think, with the PAWS system, because so far we haven't been able to build that community in a major way.
Yeah, but I think we have to simplify and make it easy, and document and show things and make it even easier.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So hackathons being, more hackathons. Like maybe we shouldn't wait a year for hackathons. Now that we've shown that the virtual hackathons work. You saw that, Susanna. Like we had the sentiment from folks saying, "Oh, this is really great. We should do one again within the next year, like before the next year."
Yeah, this would be the time to announce that there will be one even before the next one. But I will maybe save it for the last.
I have a step back question about you talked about the machine learning contributions. So you have suggestions for people to say either yes or no to the contribution. I was wondering if individual contributions not related to these kind of softwares and applications do you have experience in grabbing this information from individual users own wiki to the local database. For, let's say, in an editathon, a person sees that the image on Commons and decides to add the image position box. So is this data being contributed to the local database at some extent?
Oh, you mean is it being brought back into the Met database?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. Right now, the positions is not. And then this also, this brings up, and Susanna too, brings up a really good philosophical question that a lot of folks may see what we're doing with Wikidata and say, you're doing linked data wrong. That by sucking in all the stuff into Wikidata, that's not the vision of linked open data, right? The vision of linked open data is that you've got many, many well-done databases and they're federated, right? So that you can maybe hit Wikidata because it's got pointers to all the databases, but you should probably be saying, show me all paintings that depict horses and foxes. You should be doing a federated search across the Louvre's, Wikibase and the Smithsonian's Wikibase and the Met's Wikibase, and to hold all the depiction data in one place with coordinates is not the right way to go. And it's not, so yes, kind of, but it's like these folks are not making their own Wikibases on any scale, right? We kind of need to have a hub and spoke model of like putting all this information in one hub. So the question related to what you're saying, Éder, is like, is this being sucked back out into the institution and being held there? I don't think anytime soon, because what happens is the utility of having it on Wikidata is actually better than on the Met. Like, because, in our Wikidata query engine, you can do kind of cool things like, Susanna, you were doing it this past weekend saying, here's a point. Is it inside this box or is it located in Sweden? Is it located in Finland? They can't do that math through the Met API, but you can do it on the query engine for Wikidata, right? So it's actually sometimes better to have it reside on the Wikidata side because we actually have better interfaces for it. We've got better tools for it versus the Met necessarily holding it in their database, because theirs is TMS is kind of like an SQL traditional relational database, right? So they don't really have this hyper capability to do a lot of stuff. And it's not a criticism of the Met or TMS, it's just that's not what it was built for. So I don't know, Richard, if you have any opinions on what the prospect is in the future of the Met using more detailed like depiction coordinates and bounding boxes.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if it could happen in the future. I certainly think it would be a benefit if there was, like a dedicated depiction database that's at every museum in the world and that has updated information that is partly round tripped from Wikidata. But I do think there's something to be said for having a common catalog, art catalog of the world. And I think that's a really nice thing. I mean, we don't necessarily want, we don't necessarily, the people say things about the death of Socrates, and it's not just the Met that talks about it. It's the whole world of commentary on famous and not so famous artworks. And it's nice that scholarship and that opinion can be a little bit pooled in a community, in a sort of a nonprofit community resource. And I think that's a positive. I mean, it should exist alongside other things, but I think that, this just saying that, oh, well, these paintings are in this museum's database and these paintings in that museum's database, I don't think that's a great end solution. It should be that there is additional data in these different museums that is on top. So that's a more official layer that's on top of, say, what's in Wikidata or whatever the universal catalog of the future is.
I think there's a special role for aggregators of big projects that collect data from several institutions and provide these services then to these very small museums and other institutions. I don't think it's kind of feasible to even think that all institutions would have their own Sparkle endpoints and graph databases. But I see that having these collective services will be useful. And I'm really, really thinking that Wikidata is a kind of a hub and a telephone directory, and that it could then ingest or like display, or with the help of Wikidata, you can then display domain-specific information that it doesn't make sense to bring into Wikidata. And I really I'm expecting to see this federated landscape of Wikibases. And I have a feeling that it's also because it's been quite technical, and if it becomes more easier to maintain, or not even necessarily have to host such a service yourself, it's a cloud hosted thing, and then you can do all the easy things that you are used to do with Wikidata for your own data set of baking or whatever. I was using baking today. Baking is not really present in Wikidata, very much at least. So to be able to combine these different scales of information, I'm looking forward to that. And actually this also is a pet idea of mine, because I'm interested in microhistories in a project I might show as one of the case studies, where the idea is that you would be able to contribute much more detailed information about people who don't make the notability criteria of Wikimedia projects, but then be transparently showing it together with the big data of the big platforms. And the same kind of domain-specific information may exist for any other domain as well. So in a way, I think the linked data, semantic web is doing its comeback in a very different form. So it's aggregated already.
Yeah, I think it's important to remind folks that, this vision of the semantic web and all the kind of things that we're using in Wikidata, like subject, predicate, object of triples, this was all written about in the 1990s. So we're only getting around like 20 years later to actually implementing this at scale. So we're still kind of behind on getting on top of this. And as you said, are the museums well-resourced enough to do this? Not many. We're talking like, at least in the US, we're working with the three that have the resources right now, the Met, Smithsonian, and Getty. Outside of that, really no one is, I don't want to say interested, but no one is ready or looking to create their own Sparkle endpoint at scale.
Yeah,
because
maybe it should be a cloud service thing. Maybe it should even be like a thing inside Wikidata, like just, this is how you put the official tag of your institution and open it up to every institution that's relevant. And they can put,
Right.
That we think this is this type of horse, and you think that's that type of horse, and then the community can decide which horses they prefer the most. And just providing that as a, maybe make them a special type of user class even that could just put that type of. I don't know what would require to do that MediaWiki software thing, but it seems like something that's possible.
Right. Yeah, but as you said, just convincing museums is the right approach is interesting, because librarians get it. Like when librarians see Wikidata, like, hallelujah, we're used to dealing with structured standard metadata, and museums look at it and go, we got our own way of doing things. I'm not sure we need to spend all this time normalizing our data set against that,
But I think we have to remember the whole global scale of the institutions and places and resources, and plan for that. And I think we are both in privileged situations, doing things in the high-end scale of the technological competencies.
Yeah, you're right. And if we can make some tools that help along the other folks, making generic frameworks and better tools, that would be useful. Speaking of that, Éder, I don't know if you want to share your diagram, but I thought it was very useful as a starting point to figure out, how to expand that and to put more detail into it.
Share my screen. That's it. So, speaking of cases, here in Brazil, we are developing a project with the Museu do Ipiranga, also known as the Museu Paulista, and we are trying to understand and see from other cases from other cases around the world about the data round-tripping process. So a preliminary graph that we built is this one. I'll do a zoom in the next slide. And the process that we imagined is based on 3 main branches. These are only steps on the way that are meant to be expanded. So the first branch involves the exportation or the export of the data from the museum or from the institution. So we have this first branch, and we have the results, the data they are providing. These data goes to Wikidata and to other Wikimedia projects, but in the Museu do Ipiranga project, we usually go export their data to Wikidata, and we don't use a lot of structured data on commons yet. The second branch is all this set of points here. That is the exportation of the enriched data from the Wiki projects. So we have the metadata on Wikidata, all the information that the museum contributed, and we have been developing tools and applications so users, Wikimedia users, can contribute to the project. We have, as of today, 4 web applications about counting how many trees there is in this painting, how many children, how many chairs there is in this picture. We have another tool to talk about the wardrobe of people depicted in the paintings. This woman is wearing a ring, earring, and so on. We have another for which brand are the objects of the museum are of a specific brand. So we ask users to navigate through the galleries of images of that object, and then identify the brand of that object. And we have another one to depict, to ask for users to identify the motive, the motive of the object. So what is the pattern in this object of the museum? So all of these are tools developed to enrich the metadata and the data from the museum. And we have this branch of in the export of these data from the wiki projects to format, a CSV, a JSON, an HTML file. And we have all the obscure branch, that is how do we compare these two databases, the wiki one and the museum one, so we can produce 2 different sets of statements. The new statements, there are new contributions from users on Wikidata, per se. Oh, this is not a plane, is this type of plane, this specific plane, for say the 14 Bs from Santos Dumont. And we have corrections or values that were contributed from the museum that users modify this data, correcting or updating this information. And both informations in this diagram needs to be curated by the museum. So the information that the wiki users provide or contribute to be imported into the local database from the museum needs to be curated by them. So this information I want in my local database, this information I don't agree with this information. There is no source or something like that. And then we have this set of informations, new and edited, to be curated for the importation on the local database. So we have a zoom of this process on the 3 branches, basically. This here is what we are doing since 2017, I think. That is from the museum, from the institution, we obtain the data set, and we wikidify this data set, and then we import to the wiki projects. We are trying to build a technical guide on how do we export from the wiki projects until to the institution. So this diagram involves a lot of what were said by Andrew and Susanna. This is referenced. The references for this diagram are the Met in Sweden study cases. So there is a few sources for this type of thing, the data round tripping. So we have a limited set of sources to build this diagram, but we built a proposal, and we are enriching this diagram to add more steps to it. And we are trying to discuss this diagram with the community as well, and in this Wikidata Lab, so we can improve it. And I think we'll have a discussion here. We can comment on the diagram, I think.
Very cool. You know, the funny thing is I just realized, I don't know if any of us actually even mentioned the word open refine yet in our talk, but it's certainly one of the key tools for all of this work. But maybe we're just too excited to talk about the next step out, but open refine is a workhorse for doing this. Is that in your workflow here, Éder?
I don't think we, I think we add in this automated wikidatification. So a mention to the process that can be done by the open refine, but can be also done by other tools or workflows.
Are you using the reconciliation API directly, or how are you doing that part?
As of today, we are using spreadsheets.
Oh, just by hand?
Yeah, not entirely by hand, but we created this workflow of lexicons. So we have this crosswalk since 2017, and we are using this workflow since then. So we have the spreadsheets, but this can be easily used with the open refine as well.
Yeah, I think we it's a very similar thing where when we started out, we put it on Google Sheets, right? So then even curators or people who were not used to any of this stuff, not used to Python, not used to Wiki, can edit the spreadsheet and suddenly help resolve or connect the two sides. And then after we got that pretty solidified, we moved that actually to a wiki table. So we had some folks saying, I don't like using Google products. I'm like, okay, let's see if we can move that crosswalk database, that table, completely to a wiki table. And, there's some pretty good libraries now for just reading a wiki table, turning into a data structure in CSV, and then putting it back out and literally round tripping that spreadsheet. Okay. So that's what we're doing now, is that all the crosswalk databases are actually on a wiki subpage, and even your average Wikipedia person could edit that crosswalk database if they want.
My crosswalks are, sorry.
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, my crosswalks are very often as OpenRefine projects, but it would be really good to be able to share them. That is not something that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then what would be then the format? I think a wiki page is a very handy format in this environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a good time to tell people that OpenRefine can now run in the cloud, right, Susanna?
Oh, yes, do it. Yes, miracles happen overnight.
Yeah, the reason we don't use OpenRefine is because we have a team of people working on these lexicons, so these crosswalk databases. So the easiest way we found was through Google Sheets, and that is the reason we don't use OpenRefine. Also, the in the beginning, a learning curve of how do we get the information. So once you or Wikidata and column on OpenRefine, how do you get what was the value here, the textual value? So this was a step that we stop it in, and then then let's go to Google Sheets. That is easier for now, and we are using since then for convenience.
I think it's a great tool, and you will be able to find. I mean, actually, the reconciliation data has all kinds of information, which I just learned that you can find the type that you used in the reconciliation, as well as the ID and the text, the title that are there. They are all there that you can query. Amazing. Anyway, what Andrew was referring to just recently now, saying that over the weekend at the hackathon, UviPanda was installing OpenRefine in the Jupyter environment, and that means that for everyone who wishes to use it, it is possible now as a cloud service. Andrew, maybe you could tell a little bit more about what practicalities there are.
Yeah, I mean, the OpenRefine is a tool that's been used by data science folks and, Wikidata folks to align your data set to Wikidata, right? Like, I have a list of 100 authors. Do you have a Wikidata item for them? And then what you do is you basically run it through OpenRefine, and you can say matched against humans, Q5, right? Or match it against places, and you tell it that. And OpenRefine does a pretty good job of using what we call a reconciliation API. So it's basically a backend that can resolve this, does a fuzzy search against Wikidata, and returns results. And it's nice because it looks just like a spreadsheet program, right? It looks really much like Excel, but it does a lot of cool things in the backend. The problem is you have to download the package on your computer, install it, and then it does this weird thing because it used to be a Google product. So it kind of runs a web server on your laptop, but uses a web browser to attach to that web server. So it's always kind of weird for people, like, what is this thing doing? It's like, there's two pieces that need to run on this thing. So the cool thing now is that after this past weekend, UviPanda installed it on WM Cloud, the Wikimedia cloud service. So if you go to pause, and then I put the link in, I don't know if the link is on here. Somehow it's not showing up here. But if you, Éder, if you want to do my screen share there, I can show you what it looks like. So if you just go to pause.wmcloud.org, I think I can type in the URL there so it's easier for folks to read. So if you go in there, oh, actually it is there. So right there, if you say hub.pause.wmcloud.org/user/user redirect, meaning it's going to go to your account and not someone else's account, OpenRefine. So you basically, if you're in pause, you just put OpenRefine after that. It'll run OpenRefine, which is pretty cool. You used to have to download this, install it. And for folks who were using like a corporate laptop and they don't allow software to be installed, you're out of luck. You couldn't run OpenRefine. So this is great. Also, for training, this is great because I remember when we did OpenRefine training at like WikidataCon, the first 15 minutes were just like finding like, oh, you're Linux, oh, you're in Mac, you're in Windows, download this, and it was just troubleshooting installing it. So this is just great. Like, everyone just go to the site. You've got your own OpenRefine. So I think it's great. And it's actually not a resource intensive tool. So it should scale quite well. It just takes a lot of time on the back end to query Wikidata over and over and over again. Yeah. So I don't know if there's any other things to say about that, but it's just makes it a lot easier to people to access this tool. Although the problem that Susanna talked about before is not solved. Like you still can't like collaboratively share the results of an OpenRefine, which would be my dream come true, right? Like sometimes you reconcile like 10,000 rows and you only have time to process 1,000, but it'd be nice if I could say, Richard, could you look at 1,000 rows? Susanna, could you look at 1,000 rows? And we'll make short work of this very quickly, but you can't. You have to like have one person, one OpenRefine run, and that's unfortunate.
Comment from João about the OpenRefine, about the SDC editing and file upload functionalities are being developed, led by Sandra Falconier.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one reason why I remembered to bring it up, because the future of image uploads and structured data on Commons, I think, is through OpenRefine. Right, Susanna?
Yes.
So it's a powerful tool meant for reconciling text records and things like that, but it might be the vehicle for doing all kinds of interesting things going forward, which kind of scares me because I find that OpenRefine is a really powerful tool, but I'm not sure I know what's going on half the time. It's really complex. So I don't know do I have a project that I can open? Oh, I guess I have a project. Okay, so let's open up one of these things and see what, okay, it's 41,000 rows. Yikes. Okay, so let me just show you what one looks like, and I don't know whether this is going to work or not, but yeah, there we go. So this is kind of what OpenRefine looks like, and you're basically saying my database says this, Douglas D. Ellington, and then OpenRefine kind of came back and goes, I think it's this guy, and it probably is. So I put my mouse over it, and it says it's American architect. Is an architect, and if you say yes, you can say match the cell, and it'll say good. I've now connected the two together. It hasn't made any edits. It's just saying I'm going to export a report that says these are two exactly the same people. So again, as I said, it'd be nice to say, I got 41,000 rows. Could I send this link to 100 of my closest friends and have them chip away at this slowly to help resolve some of these things? But right now, that's not possible to my knowledge. And we tried it this weekend. I don't think there's a way to do that right now. But the cool thing is that you can actually go in here and do more sophisticated things. Like you can export a column and even do actions, right? Susanna, you're probably better than this because I wind up just as a coder going to Python and doing it all there, but you can actually say act on this column and make an edit to Wikidata, right?
Yeah, well, the actions, maybe you well, they do all kinds of things. They for example, they reconcile the best candidate to the best candidates, or they remove the reconciliation data, or they decide that all of these are bad matches, just create new ones for all of them, and like match everything to Q42.
Or like if you've processed every single thing and you're highly confident you've made every decision right, like saying, I found the person that matches, and the ones that don't match, I'm sure we need to make a new item, right? Then you can go through here and say, go through here under actions and say, create a new item for each cell, right? So you can actually use OpenRefine to create like 1,000 new items with this data, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it kind of scares me because I'm not exactly confident. It's like, I'm scared of me making one thing wrong here. So I'll usually go to my own programming environment for that. But I think a lot of people have been very successful with this.
Yeah, I use it a lot, and I've been avoiding coding. And actually, I don't code, but I'm probably getting to that because there are things that I'd like to do, and I'm impatient for the tools to develop that way that I could be able to do what I want to do. So rather than develop the tools, I will, well, develop my own tools. But
Yeah.
in a shared manner, this is something that I think that like the wiki way of developing tools, that in addition to these marvelous tools that work for everyone, I really like the idea that we might have a garden of like half-baked tool parts that we can put together and just modify to our needs.
Right.
Really.
I mean, in theory, I don't know what the user interface they have in mind for this new upload through SDC or I'm sorry, upload through OpenRefine. But ostensibly, you could have the URL of the image in a column here, right? And then you could basically say, for every row, you know, your action is going to be upload the file from that URL into Wiki Commons with this copyright information. So basically, it's acting like Patty Pen at that point, right? But with a URL instead of a local file, and that'd be very powerful. I mean, I would use that tool if it had that interface.
Have you done reconciliation with this, so that because this does amazing job with uploading? Do you have any Wikidata schemes that you could show?
You mean uploading metadata?
Uploading everything that you have in this sheet to Wikidata.
Yeah, I'm too much of a control freak, so I wind up writing my own code.
Yeah.
but I would encourage people to use this. I know folks who do like thousands and thousands of edits to add authority control records to synchronize library data. Like librarians, I know a lot of librarians who use it. Éder, do you use it much, or is it just you go with something else?
Don't use it much, but I've thinking about some projects that we done that were one people or two people projects working on one at a time, that we could use OpenRefine to run this smoothly than Google Sheets. For example, we recently uploaded 28,000 laws and decree laws from the Brazilian legislation into Wikidata. Then a lot of informations are the same. This is a law on the federal level emitted by the presidency of the Republic. Then all these data are the same. We could reconcile with the name of the people. I think we could use it more. I think we will be using more OpenRefine in the future, but we don't use it a lot.
Right.
If you want, I can just briefly show the interface for uploading.
Yeah, I'd love to. I wind up never venturing into that part of it.
Yeah, I have this notorious Lapland Lakes as an OpenRefine project. So that's what I was working on over the weekend, because I wanted to have something that OpenRefine doesn't do. And I've been experimenting, but I haven't done. I'm not a coder. I will make it a long-term project. So share screen. Oh, sorry, I'm here slow. There. So here was the tab that you had, which is the let's say the original spreadsheet. And I have all kinds of columns here that have been reconciled to Wikidata items. And also I have created these links that are just, calculations like you could do in Excel or some other software that use some data here, the coordinates, and then put it into a WikiShootMe link. And something similar for nearby query in Wikidata. This is just to show that this is an environment to do all kinds of calculations or tweaks and wrangling with your data. Actually, it is the data wrangling tool. So here is the schema, which resembles very closely to the interface in Wikidata. And you would here you would add your data to this scheme, or these. Let's say these are the columns, and the ones that have this green underline, they're the ones that have been reconciled. They are the columns that have been reconciled to Wikidata. So for these textual items in your data set or table, it has found the equivalent item in Wikidata. And this is what you will have to have as a starting point for this schema. So I have this match ID, and for that I am going to do a lot of terms like labels, descriptions, well, aliases as well, but not here. And then I have the statements, and I just create them the same way that I would create them in Wikidata, except that I'm using the column name here, like it's an instance of Lake Opon, and I have the reference here and all of that. And then it reports on all kinds of problems, this is really, really great, because it also detects a lot of mistakes that you have made. And then finally, there's a preview of items that it's going to upload. And it either creates new ones or appends to the ones that exist there already, and it sort of happens seamlessly. So a wonderful tool. I'm stopping sharing now.
That's really neat. I didn't know that did that preview, so it'll kind of already check before you hit the destroy all things button that it won't destroy things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that helps, because that's always my nervousness. Like, are you sure you want to hit this button and do 10,000 things? That's always my fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool to see, and especially if they develop that to be the SDC method.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that'd be great.
I always do one item a batch, then 100,
exactly.
1,000.
Same with me.
Checking every few minutes to see if it stopped it.
I have commitment issues, so there we are. That's my hang up as well. But there's some questions in the chat there with Open. So Yamin asks us, with OpenRefine on the cloud, what is the future of quick statements? But it's a good question. I mean, one thing I have done, Susanna, is I've actually used OpenRefine to just generate the quick statements. So I get like this kind of intermediate step where I'm not ready to hit the go button, but I'd like to inspect the quick statements first, and then you can run batches of those, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I have done it when I've run into some kind of technical problem that I don't know why it happens, that OpenRefine just doesn't upload it for some reason. It's probably something in the Wikidata end that I have something bad in my data and it refuses to do it. I don't know exactly, but then I have managed to go around this with exporting quick statements and then importing from there.
Oh, interesting. So there's something that's erroring out inside OpenRefine, but
generally it works well. But then you have a big file, and then you've worked for weeks on it, and it gets complicated, and there's no way of getting back. Well, there's a history, but you don't know if it's corrupted or something.
Right.
Generally, they don't get corrupted. But
for me, it's always the date. I always forget. There's one date that is missing the day, and then the code breaks. but I think quick statements is good, excellent tool for catching errors. You make 500 batch, show me 500 batch, and then you catch any error, explicit error. I don't think quick statements, it's a good tool to use with other tools, like, for example, generate a code to run on quick statements. If you are developing a tool, I think the API is better for, at least for the end user, that will won't need to upload twice to your tool, and then quick statements, and understand how to upload there.
Yeah.
That is my experience with the metadata applications that I
wonder the other direction of the round trip is the more challenging one. So how do you go about with it, like in both of your institutions, both Éder and Andrew and Richard? So what does your system ingest? What kind of, I don't know, data formats, or what kind of stuff do you get back, and how is it fed back into your system, and how is it managed in the system? Is it equal to contributions from the institution, or is it somehow kept hygienically separate? And if so, then what's the use of it, and if it doesn't get to the system or the actual data?
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, we are now 2+ years into the engagement with the Wiki community. So the kind of sophistication we have with the Met folks is pretty good. So the person who runs the database knows how to do a Sparkle query to pull down things that match what's in their TMS system. So that's great to see that. The other thing is we're bringing in the metadata from the Met when it comes to like depiction information, which is, kind of a little bit subjective. We're putting in a qualifier of determination method, at least in because as we said, there's no references in structured data on commons. So we're saying determination method, and they have a new Q item just called the Met tagging initiative. So at least we're like putting in all those as determination Met tagging initiative. We didn't put in those things, but I'm thinking of doing it we should also say determination method Met AI project, because right now we had a bot that was the engine for adding the Wikidata game creations, but we haven't flagged them in the qualifier. So maybe we should go back to those 7 or 5,000 determinations and say determination method Met AI tagging or something like that. So then we have a cleaner identification for where those things came from.
Yeah, that's a whole discussion of like how to structure those statements. But maybe. Yeah. Sorry, I'll have to switch on the lights. I'm disappearing soon. So just a second.
So, Éder, are there any other questions or issues that you were working on? Like, what are the next big steps that you're working on for your GLAM engagement?
We are writing this proposal of technical proposal for data round tripping, and we are doing a small collection. So we have the database from the museum. The database is from the 90s, I think, so it's pretty old. But the data there, we have experience in Wikidata it and exporting to Wikidata and the other Wikimedia projects. The challenge we are facing is how do we compare? Because once the metadata from the institution is exported to Wikidata, we have to compare what is on Wikidata already with the database. So to generate the changes. So it would be this part of the database. Let me present again. This last branch is the third branch. That is how do we compare and what tools do we use. And here, working with this suggestion, this takeout from the Sweden GLAM projects, that how do we measure the provenance, the good faith involved in the addition of information from users on updating the institution metadata. So is this part here, and we have the challenge of working with artificial intelligence. It's something that we never done before on that help the curator of the institution to decide either if this is a good new addition or if it is a bad addition. So the challenge is this third part of the diagram. We never done this part before.
We might want to make a even just a small working group of Wikimedians talking about that. Like we kind of left the artificial intelligence project on its own for like a year. We haven't come back to it, but I think it's worth coming back to and maybe having a small discussion group around that. Yeah, and then ORs. We didn't even talk about ORs at all, but that's a good one as well. In theory, I mean, ORs, for the folks who are out there, the revision scoring, like just automatically using machine learning to figure out the quality of an item or a Wikidata article. But what is your feeling about how ORs works on Wikidata? They do give a ranking or like a grade to Wikidata items, but I found that I'm always in like D class or C class, and I never climb up very high on the ranking for ORs rankings for Wikidata items. So what is the status of that? I don't know, Richard, whether you know as well.
Not sure I can evaluate ORs on Wikidata right now.
I use ORs because it was the only rating that I knew, but this can also involve artificial intelligence to compare if the contribution, the update of the metadata is a good contribution or not, based on the edits that user is doing over the museum metadata. So I don't know how this works yet, but this is the part that we are figuring out. But yeah, this is the next challenge. All these, the first branch, how to Wikidatify and import to Wikidata, this is a process that is semi-automatic because you have the automated Wikidatification, but it is semi-automated because you have to make the decision. This is really the key ID for that item. So this is manual and at some extent. But and the second branch is also pretty known, is the exportation from the wiki projects. We have the Wikidata Query Service, the MediaWiki API, and how do we export and which information do we export from these projects. So these two branches are not, I won't ever say easy, but are easier than this obscure third branch.
And are you using a specific Python environment for that? Are you using PAWS or using your own like Python development system?
We are using yet none, but we are studying this PAWS environment. But I don't know yet how to work with that. What? I'm seeking recommendations.
Strangely enough, Microsoft, I know, strange, their VS Code environment for doing Python is getting pretty good reviews lately. I've been using PyCharm, which is pretty popular. If you've got an academic or educational connection, you get the whole thing for free, so it's not bad. So I use PyCharm.
PyCharm, yes.
Yeah, PyCharm's nice, but it's VS Code, I think, is just out and out free, I think, for the Python side, or using Anaconda. But it gets kind of complex when you deal with environments and packages and stuff like that. So sometimes it's nice to just, if it's not a big task, to use the PAWS system that we have on WM Cloud, because for folks who just want to learn the Python and get the task done and not have to learn about a full environment, then the PAWS system is kind of nice to have one-stop shopping for everything. Otherwise, there's a lot of things you need to install on your computer to get virtual environments running and packages and versions and all that stuff. All right. I don't know if there's any other questions. Oh, yeah. There's someone who mentioned in Google Collaboratory and Google Spreadsheets with the Wikipedia and Wikidata tools. Yeah, we completely forgot to mention that. Those are some really great tools in Google Sheets. So I think a Google employee was the one who created the Wikipedia and Wikidata tools as a add-in to Wiki Sheets. So that means that for any cell, you can at least do a basic call against the API to get the label or the description of a Q number, or even find the Q number for a string, which is great. It doesn't scale beyond like a few hundred items because your Google Sheets kind of blows up because you're like doing 1,000 calls per second if you're doing something in the Sheets, and it throttles. But otherwise, it's a great exploratory tool for that.
Yeah, I think also I have a feeling that it's discontinued. The support or the development hasn't been continued for some years, and I've become a little bit wary of it because anytime you change something, it fetches all the values again, and then you have these things on several columns, and it does like a huge amount of Wikidata Sparkle queries. So I'm like intimidated by it.
We use it as a means of verifying the Wikidatification that we made. So let's say we are Wikidifying authors or creators of artworks. So we make the names, the key IDs for them, and then we have query on using the Wikipedia and Wikidata tools add-on to Google. So we check if all of them are humans. So or if you have some kind of mistake in the Wikidatification. We don't use it very much for finding key IDs because it depends on the Wikipedia article for that term, or even the Wikidata lookup. The Wikidata, there is a lot of people, a lot of duplicated items or items that have share the same name but are from of different things. And once you use it, pretty much 30 to 70 are all right. But for that number, we usually do it manually because the payout is better. So I don't like to use it for searching strings on Wikidata, but we use it for verification of the Wikidatification. And
I use it a lot for. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, okay.
No, as I was saying, we use it for very small engagements, like on editathons and just checking with a GLAM unit to say, hey, here's 100 of our famous artists. How are they on Wikidata? So, Éder, if you see my screen share, I'll show you some. As you said, it hasn't been developed very much, right, since it first launched. So we added some extra functions, like you can even bring back the ORS rating, like that. So it's kind of nice to just give the tool to like a curator and say, yeah, just paste in your list of people, and it'll come back automatically to do some basic, like a very low rent reconciliation, right? This is very basic. Like hopefully it matches, But if it does match, it can give you an ORS rating for the article. It'll bring back like the description and occupation and any kind of identifiers you're interested in, like VF or whatever. So we found it to be useful, but as you said, if you go like past 100, you're kind of asking for trouble because it is not smart whatsoever. It'll keep hammering the API with not dummy, but like redundant requests, and that's not good. But we found it kind of useful because for the stuff that we do, we've done this at the Met and Smithsonian, you can actually do some cool charts like this, just very basic stuff that says, the majority of your articles are kind of start in C class, so you got some work to do there. And you can even rank them by popularity because it can hit the page reuse API and kind of show you which ones are getting the most traffic, which is kind of cool. And then on top of that, like if you want to see like which ones have a headshot or not, you can bring in the image and kind of see which ones need an image. So that's another way to look at the data there. So, you know, it's a very low rent version of like OpenRefine, but it runs in Google Sheets. So it's kind of cool. But you're right. We do need someone to go in and like expand it. I mean, I'm happy to give, if anyone wants this, I'm happy to give you the code and see if you want to submit a pull request for it, because I am not a good JavaScript person and all of this is JavaScript. So if you go in there and hit script editor. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm actually just taking the code from the original Google guy and I made a new, I just took this chunk of code and this modified the API call to use page views and or auras right there. You know, I don't like JavaScript. I'm bad at JavaScript, but I basically hacked it to do something I wanted to. So please, anyone who wants to do this, take it up and do it.
I made a modification this past month because it returns once you have a key ID, it returns the label of the property. For example, if I want the P31 of that key ID, it returns the label. And I really wanted the key ID for the P31. So I made a modification to return only the key ID, not the label.
Yeah. And it's pretty easy to modify, right? You just go to your script editor. But you're right. We probably should have someone think about this and just make a big update to the tool just to add all these functions. I'm pretty sure they'd be relevant to a lot of folks. So what do you have here? Rev ID, ORs, yeah, I can't. Oh, then another problem is that a lot of these functions, if it doesn't find it, it'll return some error. And I don't want an error. I want just a blank cell instead, right? So I wrote a function that does that. So there's definitely things we could improve in this tool that might make it useful for more people.
Yeah, maybe I could bring up the page where that we created for this event and activity of data round tripping. It's a little bit late maybe for that because not everybody's going to hear about it, but it's a good place to jot down ideas of things that, you know, could be done, such as fixing this and that. Just a second. I wonder if we shared this already at some point. Where should I put it? I'll put it in the the YouTube chat.
Is the structured data for GLAM-Wiki on Meta?
Yes.
I'll put the link on the chat.
I put it on YouTube chat already, but it's probably not going to the Facebook.
Yeah, I think the link that you paste is not, YouTube doesn't allow.
I think they're spam filtering our links.
Terrible.
Okay, I pasted the link.
Okay. Good. Yeah. What do you think? What should we do? Do we have Facebook viewers? Or only YouTube? Oh, there are.
Yes.
Like, should we gather in the Google Meet, or continue here, or what do you think?
I think we can. I don't know. We can continue here, and then people can ask questions on the section.
Yeah.
Will you present your screen? Share your screen, so we can see the page.
Oh, the page. Yeah. Right. Just a second. Well, I'll just see which. Yeah, that one. So the idea is that we could possibly, well, let's at least introduce it and things that are in there, and see I hope this is the right one. Structured data for, no, oh no, structured. Oh, that one. Here, yes, this page. It's created for this event and as a canvas for adding ideas. And there was also a section for case studies. And there is one case studies from Sweden, from the Swedish National Heritage Board, that has been added here in quite good detail. So I don't know if Magnus was here listening. He could have, for example, presented this case. Let's see if there are, oh, sorry, back end showing. So if there's the creator of this page is around, he could maybe talk about this. And if not, I'll go back to the page and run it through, like title by title, just briefly. So I took the findings from the Riksantikvarielia, meaning the Swedish National Heritage Board research, and put the key findings on this page. And here it says that. And the types of institutional contributions that were mentioned specifically in that research have been put here. And these examples could be like now case studies, cases that you have worked with where you have added new items and objects from the institution, cases that are worth or like educative to learn from. And these are the types of user contributions that the institutions value back in their systems or collections data, and barriers for being able to use that data that is being enriched in the systems. And here, hopes and wishes. I think we have gone far beyond what reads here on the pages, but we could do a good job at the end of the day to maybe write down things that were mentioned and discussed in the call. And here are the three emerging workflows that I brought up, but there are several others that are worth mentioning, and then case studies. This is the page, but I have a feeling that we might not. We are not in a setting where we are discussing with the viewers, so that we could be adding things here. What do you think?
I think, let me see. I think we can share the link with the viewers, and they can read. Yeah, and maybe add the questions on the discussion page.
Mm-hmm.
And we can work on this ongoing.
Yeah. What kind of hopes and wishes do you have for such a page? I think it's good that we do that documentation, as we discussed earlier, that it's super important. But what kind of information makes or is useful? Because some of this is self-evident. Or I think like the whole cases, like whole case study, might be the useful takeaway.
Yeah.
So maybe
on this page you have the case studies, structured data for GLAM-Wiki, Swedish runstone pictures.
Yeah.
I think we I can involve the Museu Paulista study case. We are developing yet, but we can start also once is more robust. We can add especially the takeouts, so we can have an example from places or institutions around the globe. A more diverse set of questions and challenges, and to be a place where people go to see the challenges and ask questions and talk about how to overcome some of these challenges, and then we can spread the practicals, the good practical practices, so other institutions, especially smaller ones, can adopt in their capabilities to achieve these data round tripping on their institutions.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if this is the right place, but maybe this is a good place to discuss generally the different kinds of GLAM instructions, best practices, glossaries, like what is this term in your language, and how is it explained, and what is GLAM, and what is I don't know, content management or collections management, etc. So should we work in a specific place in the Wikiverse for gathering this information? And what do you think of that? Like, this is a good place, but is this the best place? This is maybe regarding structured data on commons, yes, but should we establish a GLAM space, or do we already have a GLAM space?
Traditionally, our GLAM stuff has been scattered on different places, right? So we've had Outreach Wiki, which has been kind of not the best choice. Yeah, it's like the newsletter is there, but that's about it. Meta is probably where it should go, but Wikidata is where the action is, and Commons is where the excitement is. I don't know. It's like all over the place at this point.
Yeah, I've been starting to direct my stuff to Meta because it's not any of the projects, and it can. Right. It's rather dull currently, but nothing stops people from clicking away in there.
Yeah. I think Meta is probably the right place for it because it's cross Wikidata, Commons, Wikipedia. It's your classic case of Meta is the right place, I think. Yeah.
I think we should talk with GLAM and Culture, because I understand that they have plans to do some coordinated documentation and like representing like the community. I think we could also contribute. So maybe have a chat about that. Yeah. But I actually vote for Meta, although it's quiet. Yeah.
Well, I at least put the presentation from today into the bottom at the case studies. So that's a start, at least cataloging all the presentations on there. So
good. That's I don't know yet what.
Yeah, we will have the video on some channels on YouTube, but we will upload to Commons as well.
Yeah.
So
I should do that to my slides as well. Yeah, they're still in the Googleverse.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we don't have more questions. No. I think we can finish them, and we continue working on this page and this page on Meta that to be created or discussed it where to be created. And then we put the links on the event page and other, I don't know how is the name of the Esplanada in English, but the place where people gather on the main page of the project. I really don't remember the name. What is the name?
Village Pump or something.
Village Pump, yes.
So, don't worry, even for like English speakers, that doesn't really make sense. Village Pump, like we never use that.
It's so wonderful. The concepts are so different. In Finnish, it's the coffee room. Did you say it's the Esplanade in Portuguese? Esplanade.
Esplanade, yes. It's
Wow.
We have this on Brasilia, the capital. You have a huge plain land where the official buildings are, and it's called the Esplanada. The ministry Esplanade, would call in English, but in Portuguese is the Esplanada.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can put the links there as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you again, Susanna, Andrew, and Richard. Richard had to log off. But thank you again for this amazing contribution. I think the discussion that we had is very rich, and we will see a lot of results from this, coming from this type of gathering and collaboration of ideas, brainstorming on the Wiki universe and the GLAM institutions universe as well. Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks for supporting this conversation.
Thank you.
Bye. Let me end the broadcast.